Today we're going to discuss infection control, week 2, lecture 1. We're going over basic hand washing procedures and we're going to introduce standard precautions and the exposure incident. Okay, some people consider hand washing to be a mundane topic. However, hand washing is one of the most important things you can do to prevent the spread of pathogens in your barbershop. Now, hand washing is different because it's not the same quote unquote 2 seconds run in there, run out. It's a thorough process that needs to be carefully evaluated. Okay. Now, looking at this sheet, this is actually in your book on pages 93 and 94. Okay, so for proper hand washing techniques, hand washing is one of the most important procedures in your infection control efforts and is required in every state before beginning any service. Now, keep in mind, at the state board, you're not allowed to have access to the water. So in exchange for a hand washing technique, you're going to sanitize your hands to include your wrist. So these are the materials, implements, and equipment: disposable paper towels, liquid soap in a pump container, and a nail brush. Procedures. Number 1, turn on the water, wet your hands. 2, pump soap from pump container onto the palm of your hand. 3, rub your hands together all over vigorously until a lather forms. Continue for a minimum of 20 seconds. 4, choose a clean and disinfected nail brush. 5, wet the nail brush and pump soap onto the bristles. 6, brush your nails horizontally back and forth under the free edges. 7, change the direction of the brush to vertical and move the brush up and down along the nail folds of the fingernails. The process for brushing both hands should take about 60 seconds to finish. 8, rinse hands in warm running water. 9, use a clean cloth or paper towel for drying your hands, according to the barbershops and policies or state rules and regulations. 10, after you dry your hands, turn off the water with a towel. Use the towel to open the door, then dispose of the towel. Touching a doorknob with your bare fingers can recontaminate your hands. Okay. You want to avoid using very hot water because this can damage your skin. You remember you must thoroughly wash your hands between clients. A waterless hand sanitizer is a substitute. However, the general rule of thumb is this. First and foremost, you can use sanitizer between every 3 customers before you are permitted to wash your hands. However, that rule is disallowed if your hands are visibly dirty. If your hands are visibly dirty, sanitizer is not going to do anything. And you must wash your hands if they're visibly dirty. Okay. I highly recommend you review that procedure. Now, let's talk about standard precautions. Okay, what are standard precautions? Standard precautions used to be called universal precautions. Now they're called standard precautions. They're guidelines published by the CDC that require the employer and employee to assume that all human blood and body fluids are potentially infectious. Let's get a little more graphic. It's our job under the guise of standard precautions to assume that all blood and body fluids is infected with HIV/AIDS. Why I say that? Because that's the most serious bloodborne pathogen we have out. And it can a client or a gentleman or woman can have symptoms for up to 11 years. I mean, can have the disease for up to 11 years with no visible symptoms. So it is our job as working professionals to ensure we are maintaining standard precautions through each and every service. Why? Why is this important? Because when a client sits in your chair, they are not required by the state board, the CDC, DHEC, or nobody to show you their bill of health, even if that client has HIV. So if we were to treat everybody like they have HIV, we will create a more safe workplace. Does that mean freaking out and running away from each and every client? No. That means operating safe and effective infection control methods, doing all our disinfectant procedures that we've previously learned, making sure your hands are clean and sanitary, and making sure each and every wound is covered up before any services is to be either resumed or performed. Now, let's go over it real quick. Okay. We also want to make sure we protect against asymptomatic clients. Asymptomatic is the client is showing no symptoms or signs of infection. Just like I say, some of your clients can look the cleanest in the world, but be the dirtiest ever. It's not our job to run their health. We're not doctors. It is our job to protect ourselves and the health, safety, and welfare of the public. That's what we've been commissioned to as licensed professionals, and even as students on the verge of becoming licensed professionals. Now, OSHA really has helped us out. That's why in our school we have biohazard containers. That's an OSHA requirement. It's special ways of disposing of those. We actually have a third party that comes in periodically to pick up the biohazard waste. Okay, let's move on. Now, there's an exposure incident. What is an exposure incident? Before we even get into that, let's go over this quick caution. Taking the time to conduct a thorough hair and scalp analysis will enable you to determine whether a customer has any open wounds or abrasions. If the client does have an open wound or abrasion, do not perform services of any kind. Let me give you an example. If someone requests a relaxer and you're doing a hair and scalp analysis, you determine that that client has open wounds or cuts or abrasions, that relaxer is only going to seriously burn that client. And you're opening the door for the spread of pathogens because of that open wound. So that's why a thorough hair and scalp analysis is important, not only through the service of a relaxer, but through anything. So when doing your hair and scalp analysis and you notice an open wound or abrasion on the client's scalp, kindly let the client know what's going on and kindly refuse the service. You have every right to do so. As a barber, you will work with an array of sharp implements and tools, and cutting yourself is a very real possibility. If you do suffer a cut and blood is present, you must follow the steps for an exposure incident outlined in Procedure 44 for your safety and for your client. Now, let's go here. Okay. We talked about this. Now, the standard blood spill procedure is now called an exposure incident procedure because they're taking it into account for other body fluids as well. Exposure, if you have If it's any contact with non-intact skin, meaning there is a break in the skin, which you see blood, body fluid, or other potentially infectious materials, and it may resolve performance of the worker's duty. Now, it is an actual procedure that we must go over. And then I think that's going to wrap us up for today's lecture. You must keep this in mind at all times, because if you improperly disinfect, or if you do not properly handle this, you are really opening the door for not only the spread of pathogens, but maybe some other serious nature. So please protect yourself so you can protect your clients, to prevent the spread of pathogens and infectious materials in the workplace. So now, handling an exposure incident. These are the materials that is needed: antiseptic, bandages, cotton, disposable gloves, disposable paper towels, liquid soap, plastic bag. Procedure: should you accidentally cut a client, calmly take the following steps. The reason why they say calmly, don't freak out. The higher octane you are, the more freaked out the clients are. They've already been cut. So the last thing they need to do is feel more uncomfortable. So the first thing you do, step 1, stop service immediately. Step 2, dispose of the blade in a sharps container and place the razor in a container designated for cleaning and disinfection. Now, step 2, at the state board, you're not going to have any biohazard containers there, because it's not allowed. Because like I said earlier, there is a special way to dispose of that. State board doesn't get into that. So this is the procedure we learn here at the barbershop. The state board, we're going to walk you through, according to the CIB, how to properly do an exposure procedure. You're pretty much going to follow these same steps. You're just not going to use any biohazard. Okay, so now you put the sharps, if you use a razor, you're going to put that razor in the sharps box. Face your client and calmly apologize for the incident. Excuse yourself and go wash your hands. Remember, the goal is to not further contaminate anything. So after you wash your hands and dry them, you immediately put on gloves. Now, step 6, apply slight pressure to the area with a moistened cotton round to stop the bleeding. Step 7, dispose of the used cotton round in a small plastic storage bag. Step 8, then gently clean with an antiseptic and have the client wash the area if appropriate. You pretty much going to wash the area with an antiseptic. We right now use alcohol wipes. So you could just take the alcohol wipe, and alcohol wipe is an antiseptic. You could take that and wipe the area clean. After that, dispose of the wipe in the plastic storage bag. The same bag that the cotton round went in. 10, dispense styptic powder onto a cotton round and use a cotton swab to apply it to the injury to stop any residual bleeding. Styptic powder or liquid is what you would call, we used to call it Nick powder, but it helps to clot up the blood to prevent the wound from leaking. So you're going to apply your styptic powder, but how you apply it, you put it on the cotton round, then you take a clean cotton swab, which is a Q-tip, and put some on it, and then apply it to the wound. 11, apply an adhesive bandage to completely cover the wound. 12, Clean and disinfect the workstation as necessary. When you clean and disinfect your workstation, you can use wipes, but when you use wipes, you want to make sure that you keep your hands onto the wipes. Don't lift your hand off the wipe. The minute you lift your hand off the wipe, throw that wipe away, get another wipe. 13, discard all single-use contaminated objects such as wipes or cotton balls in a plastic bag and then placed in a trash bag. That's the general definition of double bagging. All of those contents that you have put in that first bag will go in the trash. Deposit any sharp disposables in a sharp box. Dispose of double bagged items in sharp containers as required by state or local law. Information on these laws may be found on your local board website or through the OSHA website. In general, all these items except sharps may go in the regular trash. Notice through this process the gloves are still on. 14, remember, before you remove your gloves, all tools and implements that have come into contact with blood or other body fluids must be thoroughly cleaned and completely immersed in an EPA-registered hospital disinfectant solution designed for 10 minutes. That's your barbicide. Blood may carry pathogens, so you should never touch an open sore or wound. Gloves should be removed with caution to avoid touching the contaminated surface of the glove. Remove one glove by holding it in the other glove hand, sliding your finger under the glove at the base of the glove, and pulling it over the contaminated glove. Never allowing either glove to come into contact with your skin. So you take your gloves off after you have ensured that your workstation is already disinfected and that your tools and implements used in the blood spill have been cleaned and immersed in a disinfectant solution, because you want to protect your hands from becoming contaminated with any blood or any other body fluids. Step 15, wash your hands with soap and warm water before returning to the service. Recommend that the client see a physician if any signs of redness, swelling, pain, or irritation develop. And if everything's a go, you may continue with the service. Some quick notes. A exposure incident procedure, as if you was to cut your client, is not required at the state board. However, if in doing the haircut or the shave on your client you do cut them, you are required to perform this procedure. So you got to know it. Another tidbit, the exposure incident where you cut yourself is going to be simulated at the state board, and it's the same procedure. The thing is, you just cut yourself. They're going to assume that you cut yourself on your index finger. We're going to go over that on the CIB. Okay. And we're going to do some demonstrations on this to make sure that we got a solid understanding of each occurrence before we can safely move forward. Thank you.